Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Where you join us from, a very, very warm welcome to today's Communities and Civil Society Debrief on the 53rd Board Meeting of the Global Fund, co-organized by GFAN Asia Pacific, Seven Alliance, and the Asia Pacific Learning Hub. My name is Jennifer Ho. I'm with GFAN AP, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar session. Sorry. So before we get started, a few quick housekeeping announcements. This session it's being held in English and interpretation it's being offered in Hindi and Bahasa Indonesia. You can see on the screen on how to access the interpretation. So please do so accordingly. And as participants, please turn off your videos and mute your microphones. If you're experiencing slow bandwidth, please close any unnecessary programs and/or application in your device. And please feel free to use the chat box to engage with one another throughout the session. Please note this session is being recorded and the recording will be made available on our social media channels after the event. GFAN AP is committed to ensuring that this virtual event is conducted in an inclusive and safe environment and will not tolerate harassment of any kind. Participants that engage in disruptive behaviors may be removed without any prior notice. And on that note, how do I go to the next slide? Oh, sorry, this is, okay. Okay, so let's get started. Today's session has two key objectives. First is to strengthen the understanding of Asia Pacific communities and civil society on the deliberations and inputs from the communities, developing country NGO, and developed country NGO delegations on the board of the Global Fund. And second, to provide Asia Pacific communities and civil society understanding of the positions on the Global Fund governance issues. Just an additional side note, we're very much aware that many of you probably have already heard or are somewhat aware of changes pertaining to Grant Cycle 7 and 8. And just to note that today's session will not be diving into discussions about Grant Cycle 7 and or 8. We do have another webinar set up tomorrow, specifically on this issue. So please do also join us for tomorrow for further discussion on that. And to also note that another call around before the end of June, early July, will also be set up by GFAN AP and partners right before the Global Fund Committee's discussion. So issues that or conversations that arises today, we will have another follow-up call later on as well. So look out for that as well. Today's agenda, then we will have a number of representatives from partners to share their thoughts and perspective. First, I will, after my introduction, invite the regional coordinator of GFAN AP, the Learning Hub, and frontline aides to come and give a few words of welcome. And then Rachel Ong, regional coordinator of GFAN AP, will help provide an overview of key discussions and decisions from the 53rd board meeting. Following Rachel, we have invited representatives from communities delegation, from developing country NGO, and from developed country NGOs to come and share with us the positions from each of the delegation and their key concerns on some of these critical issues. And we will then open up the floor for question and answering and wrapping up the day after that. So on that note, no, then let me, Rachel, you did not put a slide of yourself. So then let me first then invite Rachel Ong, Regional Coordinator of GFAN AP, to help provide an overview of the key discussion and decisions from the 53rd board meeting. Rachel was also at the board meeting in Geneva, so we'll be able to provide inputs from her side as well. So Rachel, over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Jen. Maybe Jen could just switch off the background slides for now.
So I'll stop.
Apologies. The welcome from the co-organizers was a bit of a typo. We have another call that's being co-organized with Frontline Aids tomorrow. So that the welcome is from GFAN AP as well as the Learning Hub. So a very, very warm welcome to all of you. For the webinar today, we do have a lot of participants. I will remind myself and all the other speakers that will be coming up very shortly to please speak slowly. Thank you for taking time off your busy schedules to join us for the call today. We do have a lot to cover. As Jennifer had said, that we're using this opportunity for you to interact and meet with the different delegations that represent communities and civil society on the Global Fund board, and in follow-up conversations as well as in other webinars, we hope that we will be able to support them as well as to bring your voices and your concerns from the Asia Pacific region to the Global Fund governance processes. So thank you so much for joining us today, and over to the Learning Hub for welcome. Would that be Ika or would that be Chinmi to welcome people from the Learning Hub?
Hi, Rachel. Yeah, I can do that.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Rachel. First of all, welcome all for this very important discussion and debrief regarding um, the discussion which happened in the Global Fund board meeting. Like as from the Learning Hub side, we were physically not present during the board meeting, but like there are a lot of questions as well as there are a lot of confusions around from the countries as well as country networks. And this call is especially for us to also look into what were the discussions about the Global Fund board and how we are going to um, uh, affected at the country level. So welcome everyone for this important discussions, and looking forward for the insights as well. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Shimei and Rachel, for those words of welcome. And I'm going to turn it back to Rachel again, then for the overview of key discussion and decisions from the board meeting. Thanks, Rachel.
Great, thank you so much, Jen, and thank you so much, Chinmi. A very brief overview of the Global Fund 53rd board meeting that's being held in Geneva. Just also as a note that there will be no further board meetings this year from the Global Fund board. The next board meeting is scheduled for February next year due to the timelines of the replenishment and other major activities that will be influencing some of the governance processes, and I'll share more about that later. There were three main decision points from the 53rd board meeting. I will skip the first two because it's the adoption of the rapporteur and the adoption of the agenda. The third decision point that was made by the board was around the change of the TORs for the TRP members. This is basically due to the various activities or the various changes in terms of the grant cycle reprogramming and expected changes to that. So the decision was made collectively by the board for the TRP TORs to change. However, that being said, it was still, however, a pretty packed agenda by the Global Fund board. There were a lot of discussions, I suppose, given the donor crisis that's going on. People are very careful about what they are sharing, but optimistic to a certain point and extent around things that are happening at this point of time. So there were various things that happened and were shared, things like that. There was an update around the HIV, TB, and malaria priority areas, risk and opportunities, as well as on RSSH. the executive director shared a verbal report about the progress and some of the corporate priorities in 2025. So as a point of information sharing, there is some restructuring that's also happening now at the Global Fund Board. We're going to be, sorry, not at the Global Fund Board, within the Global Fund Secretariat. I think one of the things that we might anticipate would be a leaner organization that would be given the current circumstances. There are certain sobriety measures that are already happening within the Global Fund Secretariat around cost controls and budgets. There was some conversations and shared updates from the risk management and annual report. There was also information shared by the OIG. That was pretty much conversations around day one. That generally most of the donors still continue to express a lot of support for the Global Fund, looking at ways for the Global Fund to work more effectively and leaner. They generally accepted that given the circumstances that there would be expected higher risks in terms of management and internal controls, and as well as program implementation. The second day for the board meeting started with considerations for grant cycle 8. So I'm going to pop a link on the chat box very shortly that will give you access to all the Global Fund Board meeting documents that was shared for you to understand what was shared with board members for their inputs and for their conversations, for you to get a better idea. So there was also the revisions to the TRP terms of references, and basically, as I mentioned, it was around evolving the TRP model in the current context. An update was shared around the resource mobilization efforts of the Global Fund Secretariat, and then the day ended with a closed session by the Global Fund Governance, by the Global Fund Board. I think a lot of conversations that centered around day 2 was around concerns around making sure that as there were revisions to grant cycle 7 as well as grant cycle 8, that we do not neglect the meaningful and effective participation of communities and civil society in the grant cycle processes. However, I think generally there is the will, but we'll need to make sure that we continue to advocate to make sure that it's not just the intent, but that is being implemented more effectively. On resource mobilization update, there was a general sense, and we are very, I think everyone's very glad that the UK and South Africa, which is the first time that a donor country and an implementing country are co-hosting a replenishment together, would be doing that. We do expect, and I think many of the updates around replenishment were mostly around ensuring that as communities and civil society, as well as other partners and stakeholders, that we're encouraging and pushing for earlier and increased pledges to meet the 18 billion target. There was a general sense from some of the donors that they do expect that the Global Fund remains performance-based, and that there is a growing sense of ensuring that countries are more self-reliant and self-sustainable. So I'm going to wrap up what some of the main key conversations are, and we'll hand this over back to the delegations to share what their thoughts and perspectives were from the board meeting, and maybe you can have better conversation or discussion afterwards. Thanks. Over to you, Jen.
Great, thank you so much, Rachel. And on that note, let me invite Maureen Moringa, who I'm sharing my screen. She is from the communities delegation, here to share with us positions from communities delegations and key concerns that they have expressed from the board meeting. Maureen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and thanks everyone who has joined. Rachel has given a very detailed summary, so I'll try so hard not to repeat what Rachel has done so that we are allowed time for further conversations or for time for questions and answers. So just before the board meeting, our delegation submitted a paper on direct funding for key and criminalized populations. And this paper was, we can say it was positively accepted. We had conversations on the side or in the pre-meetings with other constituencies just to give clarity on some of the asks we had in that paper. And one of the wins was that the executive director said it could be considered for grant cycle 8. And this paper is actually a mechanism of availing direct funding to criminalized populations, especially in countries where, as we see countries significantly moving towards domestic resources, they may not be considered as existing populations and therefore they could miss on services. So the paper is supposed to help us to ensure that to ensure that we are mapping out these communities that are in criminalized settings and ensuring that they are not missing the services. Then we also were concerned, like Rachel has said, they shared some key performance indicators across the 3 diseases. And part of our concern was that despite many years of advocacy, Global Fund is still not investing significantly on human rights and gender. The human rights and gender KPIs performed poorly. None of them reached the 50% mark. And again, this calls for us to have a reflection on how best we can guide the process, how best we can work with the country teams to ensure that the programs that are targeted to addressing human rights and gender barriers are actually doing the right things at the country level and they are being absorbed and they're in the right hands. The resources are in the right hands. So this is something as a delegation, we thought that even after the board meeting, we can have a conversation with the other stakeholders, including our constituents, on how we can support the work on human rights and gender. We also had conversations around engagement of communities in CCM. And this is because a lot of things are happening. Reprioritization of GC7 grants, it will involve CCM engagements. We know some CCMs are doing really well, but there are some CCMs where criminalized populations and some community representatives at all. So we are trying to work with the Secretariat in terms of improving engagement of communities in CCMs. Some of our talking points had that concern that we need to strengthen the CCMs and we need to support community members in the CCM to be engaged more effectively and to have an equal voice, not just a passive tokenistic position. One other area we were very concerned around was on the grant cycle 8 resource mobilization. And of course, we really needed to get more information. We thought the momentum was a bit low, but we understood why. But we also are calling out to be engaged. Of course, we are happy to use our voices, to use our constituents of the countries, to contribute as much as possible to the grant cycle 8 resources. One thing that we are looking, or one thing that we kind of foresee is that we may not reach the targeted, and looking at how some of the board members were not very optimistic. We are trying to prepare our constituents for the eventuality of a smaller GC8 and how we will ensure that we are protecting programs that save lives and that matter to our constituency, despite a smaller grant cycle 8. We don't know what that would look like, but we're just trying to prepare ourselves on what it could be. In as much as possible, again, we know GC8 can only be successful with enough domestic resources, and therefore we are just calling on our constituents, please, if you're able to do any advocacy in your countries around domestic resources for health, please just contribute, engage in budget making processes, because where we see this response going is that more and more it will go to countries. We are also we shared our worry around a possible heavily commoditized global fund where many resources would go towards commodities and what that would look like in terms of supporting access to these commodities for our constituents. And therefore, there is a possibility that if GC8 would be smaller, the global fund programs will be heavily commoditized, and the need for us to look at how we can leverage, how we can support to get other sources of funding, and ensure that we are not losing some of the gains we have made in terms of supporting communities to address the barriers to access. In terms of RSSH, our usual ask was that the RSSH is not stressing enough on the component of community system strengthening. It's mostly focused on disease surveillance, on health system strengthening, but very little on community system strengthening. We appreciated the report that many countries are already doing community-led monitoring, but we are hoping this is not something we will lose with the reduced funding and in the global health financing crisis that we are facing, because this is the time that we need to really monitor if constituents are receiving services, and this is the time that they risk losing rapid transitions. We also looked at the risk report, and we thought it wasn't very it was a good risk report. It was reflecting the current challenges, but we didn't feel that there was a strong alert to the risk on anti-rights movement that is rising. And we know this is tampering with access to services, especially for the key population. So we really appreciated that it captured a lot of the current issues, but we are hoping that in the future risk report, we can also highlight how the movement, anti-rights movement is affecting the global funds policies, and also the global funds intention of reaching everyone and leaving no one behind. So, of course, a lot of time was taken over the reprioritization of GC7, and because we are not going to talk about it, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Maureen. I lost my screen. And just before we move on to the next speaker, I'd like to invite if there's any other members of the community's delegation who are here with us to please either raise your hand or kindly introduce yourself in the chat box. For colleagues here who are joining us today to be aware of as well. I seem to have lost my screen. Am I still sharing my screen? Sorry, Rachel, I need help. Tech help. All right, let's move on. And let me next invite Ika Novianti, who represents the developing countries NGO, to also share the position of the developing country NGOs with us and their key concern. And Ika, sorry, before I turn the floor over to you, Maureen, please also feel free to share the position paper of the delegation. I think there's a link, or it has been circulated around, but if you would like to share that, please drop that in the chat box for everyone to access. And on that note, let me kindly invite Ika to take it over from here. Ika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jen. Hi, everyone. Good morning, afternoon from Bangkok. As Jennifer said, my name is Ika. I will speak today on behalf of the developing country NGO delegation. Yeah, this board meeting was unprecedented. We have never been in this situation before, that we have had to reprioritize grant midway through the cycle, in addition to preparation for GC8 beginning next year. Though, as we know, the world today is a frightening place. What at risk, what truly at stake are millions of lives. The intersecting crises we face have placed immense strain on health system and continue to threaten the continuity of essential service for HIV, TB, and malaria. And as always, it's the most marginalized and criminalized community who bear the heaviest burden. So all three diseases have been badly affected by the cuts, and the trajectory for HIV, TB, and malaria is bad and take us back. So we won't get into that, but there is more in the report that we share with all of you as a key takeaway from this board meeting. So during the board meeting, the board approved revision to the technical review panel to focus its engagement on high impact and core portfolio as well as transitioning countries while allowing flexibility processes for other. The TRP grant review process was seen as overdue for reform, having changed little in over a decade. Our delegation insists that TRP continue its critical role in raising the alarm around power imbalance, human rights, gender inequality, shrinking civic space in many countries that marginalize civil society and communities. This independent oversight must remain despite differentiation in the grant. Our non-negotiable ask is the TRP must continue to track the gender equality marker in addition to community rights and gender components. So what are the change? Oh, sorry. For the review modality, all high impact and core portfolio will be reviewed except for those who under program continuation. The review approach will be applicable if certain criteria are met, in which case they will not review or will follow a target review or cost extension. Focus portfolio will not be reviewed by TRP. However, the TRP review can be requested by the CCM and the Secretariat in consultation with relevant technical partners. On the TRP membership, the extend current TRP members from the GC7 pool to end of the 2028 on board, and on board all GC7 non-serving and reserve list member for 6-year term with a midterm review with 3 years. And the last change was on the TRP review criteria. It will be include language on digital security and climate change, also encourage differentiated application for review criteria where appropriate. On the revision to the GC7, I know that we will have a call tomorrow again to discuss more on this, but I want to share with you the overall reflection from our delegation across the grant cycle. So as a delegation, we push back like hard on this one. We want to ensure that the Global Fund navigate this time without doing any harm to the civil society and also community. The most pressing concern shared by many delegations remains uncertainty surrounding the partnership ability to fully deliver on its strategy amidst constrained resource and potential programmatic limitation. We also emphasize that the Global Fund vital role in advancing global health security, particularly through its investment in pandemic preparedness, resilient health system, and community-led response. And moving forward, accountability measure to ensure that civil society and community engagement. We share the concern regarding the meaningful engagement of civil society and community and it were acknowledged and addressed at the closed board meeting. Consideration for GC8. Looking ahead to Grant Cycle 8, our concern remains serious. We reiterate that efficiency and sustainability must not come at the expense of justice, human rights, gender equality, or the presence of civil society. If we offer simplified the grant making process, we risk removing the very element that make the Global Fund unique, which is the country ownership, inclusive governance, and also community-led action. We support calls from the community delegation for mechanism that directly resource community-led response in more sustained and flexible manner. On the risk management, we also spend time discussing at the Global Fund risk management framework. The Global Fund is currently operating above the defined risk appetite with many factors beyond its control. Ongoing collaboration with the OIG is a key part of this process, helping to guide the response and inform necessary adaptation to align risk management with the mission. And emphasizing the importance of board and civil society and community engagement in advancing the aid replenishment and maintaining program support. On the accountability and engagement, we were also glad to see acknowledgement of the need to improve accountability for civil society engagement. The Secretariat has committed to strengthening communication with the CCM, providing target support in countries where civil society engagement is weak, enhancing monitoring and tailored briefing, and also working with the CRG and regional platform to track whether the countries are actually following through on these promises. In closing, we said this to all partners. The world may feel unstable and the pressure are real, but we cannot retreat from the failures that built the Global Fund. If anything, now is the time to double down. We must act urgent and advocate fiercely for equity, justice, and community leadership in the global health. Yeah, because if we fail to do so, we risk not only reversing progress, but we risk losing our purpose. I think that's all from my side. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Ika, for those really important feedback and that final comments as well. Just to note that we will have an opportunity for everyone to ask further questions and comments following our last speaker, Vitai Juma, sharing. But just in the meantime, please do feel free to drop your comments and questions in the chat box as well. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to invite Vitaly. Sorry, I'm trying to change my slide. I'm really not good with this today.
It's
Who
okay.
is sorry, I'm Vitaly, welcome. Who is the developed country NGO delegation to hear also share with us the positions from the developed country NGO and key concerns. Over to you, Vitaly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for inviting me for this important webinar. I am Vitaly Juma, board member of the Global Fund Board from the developed country NGO delegation. I am based in Estonia, and we have also members in Asia Pacific, Dash here, from Australia, who is unfortunately, I think, not on the call, but we also have other members of delegation working closely in the region, for example, Khan, and I know he will be talking tomorrow. So as all the speakers before me mentioned, it is very tumultuous and volatile time. And for us, the main concern is how we, as a Global Fund Partnership, will be implementing and will be reaching our strategy, the strategy that we all fought so hard for, which places communities and people in the center. In along this thought, this idea of sticking to our strategy, were aligned all our interventions. When we were talking and when we were discussing GC7 reprioritization, that was also our main concern, how to keep civil society and communities in the meaningfully engaged in the processes, in the reprioritization processes. And it is thanks to our collective push that now the CCMs are actually required to be involved in the processes at all stages, not only on the more or less rubber stamping the decision, but also in the discussion of those reprogramming. And I know there will be a webinar tomorrow, so if you will go specifically more into this, but please make very special attention to this. So there are opportunities for us to influence the decisions on reprioritization of the current grant. Of course, this is a very unique situation. We, as a Global Fund, never faced this, that we had to reduce the grants while they have been already in place or just about to implement. As regions, some of us know that as countries move to higher income status, the funding amounts decreases, but it was never like this in this unique situation. So we really need to be strong and together. On the other topics in the board discussions, on the one decision point on the TRP, our delegation had approved the TOR changes, terms of reference changes at the strategy committee before knowing the extent of the grant revision that were planned. And so at the board meeting, while we approved the decision point on the amended terms of reference of technical review panel, we mentioned that we are concerned about the diminished role of the TRP in the future process of the grant, the future process of the grant making, grant negotiations, and grant approval. So we noted that we might want to come back to this decision while we are deliberating on the future of the Global Fund. And on the future of the Global Fund, one of the topics of the board meeting was GC8 deliberation. It is really, it is, yes, really volatile situation, unknown situation also, as many donors have been saying well, long before this period, that the prospect of increased funding are minimal. So our delegation in the deliberation of the consideration for the grant cycle 8, we also emphasize the role of communities' rights and gender programming in countries. So whatever the funding scenario or the replenishment scenario will look like, we need to make sure that CRG programs are in place and that the Global Fund will not turn into a procurement agency for commodities, but also continue supporting the issue that, again, put the communities, put the people at the center of the whole Global Fund partnership. It's not also the documents, a strategy, but of the center of all what we are doing. Also, in terms of the next cycle and the replenishment discussion, we emphasize that in any replenishment scenario, we need to ensure that the catalytic investments stay in place. And this is especially important in terms of supporting human rights programming and communities, especially criminalized and marginalized communities programming, while we know that even now, all those programs, human rights, gender equality programs, are likely to end up in unmet quality demand, or that are not being funded recently and now. So in GC7 reprioritization, it also might look like those programs are in danger. So we emphasize that catalytic investments is one of the actually way that has brought results into ensuring that the programs are in place. On the risk management report and annual opinion, we thought in one of the metrics, the documents indicate that funding risks are high, but considering all the situation that we knew even before the risk management was prepared, our delegation has recommended that the risk for the funding, for the donor funding, should be reassessed as very high. And it's not just a formal tick, but also this will lead to other actions within the secretariat. So it should be, and within our strategies. So it should be lead to changes in risk appetite. So alternatively, so this will also bring more attention to the replenishment campaign as it is going on right now. Yeah, I think this is very briefly our interventions, our key points from the board. I will also put a link to our key takeaways that we placed on our website. So please go ahead and familiarize yourself, or you can also ask more tomorrow our delegation member Kana at your webinar that you are having on the GC7 processes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vitali. And again, I also invite delegation members from developed countries who are here with us today online to kindly introduce yourself in the chat box. And I think we have heard from all three delegation representative about their positions and key concerns. And I think there are many shared key concerns. I've also noted a number of comments and questions in the chat box. So I would like to next invite Chimin Kumar, who is the coordinator of the Asia Pacific Learning Hub, to help us moderate this next Q&A session. Chimney, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. Once again, hi, I'm Chinmay. I'm the coordinator for Learning Hub in the Asia Pacific region. First of all, thank you so much to all the speakers for sharing their valuable insights. I'm sure, there are a lot of questions already brewing in the minds for the participants. For now, we only have 12 minutes for this session, so I'll just request everyone to be please quick as well as keep your questions short so that we can have more and more questions to answer, as well as just if you have questions, please raise your hand, or else you can also drop your questions in the chat box. um, Jennifer, may I request you to stop sharing screen so that I can see the people raising hands?
Yes. Sorry, my
Yeah.
here you go.
Yes, Daniel,
Thank
over to you.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was joined the 53rd of the Board Global Fund, also by virtual as a steering committee of Global Fund Advocate Network Asia Pacific. What I would like to raise is about looking at the participants who joined this webinar today. I believe almost all of them, the NGO who's represent the country level, or who engaging in the country level. It's good for them also to understand with the situation of the egg replenishment what the engagement from them that we need to for them to be prepared. Let's say one with the potentially difficult funding in the future to answer the 8 billion USD. What the strategy to mobilize resources in the domestic level for them, or how they engage in the CCM to make sure in the limitation that's the part of the cake is appropriately can manage and get the benefit directly to the beneficiaries. Then what they can engage for with the regional and collaborate with the regional or global to do advocacy, mobilize resources to the donors country or to their own government to support to the pledge or private sector, whatever it is, or maybe it cannot be discussed today with the limited of time. But I'm thinking it's they need to be understand also get more information on that, what the engagement of them need to, what we expect from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I guess we can take one more question. Sonal ma'am, over to you.
Thank you. I had kind of two parts of my question. One was I wanted to know from the delegations, was there any discussion on changing the strategy of grant making? Because it is sure that moving forward that will happen. And again, it requires some work, but was there any discussion on that? And my second question was Global Fund is thinking more and more about environment and climate change. Was there any discussion around that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe anyone from our speakers would like to respond to the first two questions. Yes, Vidal, you can go.
Thanks. Sorry, Daniel, I think I didn't hear your question. I think I have some problems if you could put the chat. But on the Sona's questions, yes, there is a discussion, there is ongoing discussion of how the Global Fund will look moving forward, right? We are talking about the changes not only in the funding envelopes, but also in the way that the Global Fund will work. So there are definitely, and we keep saying that we should not do business as usual. It's like a mantra, but it is really everyone's aim to do so. There are ways uh, to decrease the level of bureaucracy in the Global Fund. How it will look like, the Secretariat and the board are discussing this. And one of the ways is actually the direct funding to community that communities delegation has been spearheading for all this time, and we are strong supporter of this approach. This is also one of the ways of how not to do business as usual, so bringing the funds and attention directly to where it should be. But absolutely, we are cognizant that the changes need to be made in any case. And on the climate health, there was not a discussion at this board meeting, but there was obviously in the meetings before. But since now the whole attention was eaten by the current funding situation, I think it was not so high on the agenda, climate and health, but it will be, I'm sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Vitali. Daniel, if you would quickly like to reshare your question in short, if it's okay. I guess we don't have Daniel here. Okay, Lizzie, over to you.
Sorry, I am here. No, what I raised actually, it's about looking at the participants here, almost all of them who engage in the country level or local organization. It will be good for them to get more information. What kind of engagement do you expect from them or from us? One, with the limitation or potential difficulties funding in the future, for them to start mobilize the resources in the country level or engage in the CCM to make sure with the limited funding they still get appropriate funding for them to manage and to support for the communities, or to mobilize the advocacy to mobilize the resources for their own government to support the global fund to the pledge, or engage in the with the regional and global communities to advocacy the donors and maybe private sector, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Anyone from the speakers want to share their insights on the Daniel's comments?
Hello, everyone. Hello,
Yes, please.
hello. Good morning, good afternoon from anywhere you are. My name is Lizzie Ibine from Nigeria. Our organization is Nigerian Women Agri-Life Farmers Association. We have been attending some of the meetings of Global Fund in Nigeria and elsewhere. How do we join them in accessing this funding? Because we need it in our communities for agriculture and nutrition. So how do we formally engage, not to participate in meetings, and in some meetings they say that we are not partners? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Maybe Aditya? Taslim, over to you for one more question.
Sure. Thank you. Hi, Aditya from International Network People Use Drugs. I have one comment and one question. So I guess the comment, I would like to thank Maureen, Vitaly, and Nika for the brief. I think Maureen mentioned very clearly that the risk of this process, we know exactly who's going to be left behind. And therefore, I would really encourage key population groups to really come together at the country level to strategize and I also want to emphasize that this is not a grant making process. Like, we only have very short window period. Like, don't wait until mid-June when the letter comes. Like, start now. Like, we need to really come together. Like, we need to push. We're not going to be invited to meetings. Come to the meetings. Like, we need to urge them to allow us to come to the meetings. Like, don't fight with each other. Like, you don't have to like with each other, but this is a different situation. Like, you don't have to like each other's, but you have to come together. Um, and um, and also wanted to say that input together with other global K-pop networks will also have webinar tomorrow at 7 Bangkok time, and so encourage you to join, because we wanted to develop a red lines and non-negotiable interventions that will then lead to an advocacy tool that you can use at the country level in your advocacy. My question is, has there been any successes in country level where community access funding from the CCM Secretariat? Because I was informed by the Global Fund that we can use this funding to do something about, whether it's consultation, whether it's meeting, whether it's convening, whatever. So I just wanted to hear if there have been any successes in accessing this funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Taslim. Speakers, any response for the question? Yes, Vitali.
Thank you, and I hope Pika and Maureen will also join. On the Daniel's question, I think, is it how civil society can be involved in the processes? Well, now actually, this is now it is a time to be involved in the process, and it is a very realistic opportunity to make changes, to influence the processes. And so as we are saying that the information about the G7 reprioritization is going to be distributed to all CCMs. Now it is a time, if you don't have connections to CCMs, if you don't know members of civil society on the CMs, to get in touch with them and to inform them and to demand that this information that will come from the Global Fund is distributed also to wider civil society in the region and in your countries, in your respective countries. And also on relative question to from Aditya, I will speak not as a board member, but as a fellow civil society activist. I know there are some CCMs that have formalized support to communities' participation in the processes. And now in the GC7 reprioritization process, there is an instruction from the Global Fund. If the CCMs have available funds, they can use it for the civil society and community additional involvement. So again, it's up to civil societies and communities to ask the CCMs a question: if you have funds, what are you going to do to ensure that we are meaningfully involved? I guess, yeah, that's it. And on the question from Lizzie, how NGOs from the countries, from the grassroots level, need to be involved again. If you want to be involved in the board process, there is a developing country NGO delegation that you will that you can apply to. So I'm speaking about your delegation, but also Lizzie, if you want to be part of the receiving grant, then you need to go through CCM, through all the country funding request negotiations. So this is how to do it. You cannot, for NGOs, unfortunately, you cannot access funds, not unfortunately, NGOs cannot access funds from the Global Fund directly. It should go from the national level. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vitali, and also for the questions. Jennifer, do we have like time for like one or two more question, or like I can just wrap up?
Um, I, I think maybe just take one more question, and my apologies to the participants. If you could just extend another 5 minutes with us, we take one last question and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I saw either Manoj or Inad. Yeah,
Just-
Manoj, sir, over to you.
Yes. No. So I have two fundamental questions basically. Every time when we ask, the CCM throws ball to, sorry, the Global Fund throws ball to CCM, and we know that CCM mechanism towards accessing funding for community is not a good mechanism in current scenario, because everywhere CCM is dominated by the government. So is there any discussion of, I heard Vitali, but is there any discussion or decision on finding out some mechanism like regional networks or something for direct access to the community?
Thank you, Manoj.
Yeah. That I didn't get direct access to communities on CCMs or direct access communities in general. If it's in general, so there is a paper that was produced by the communities delegation. It's just a start of the whole discussion, not a start. I mean, we've been talking about for a long time, but it is now it's a real proposal. So, but it's not a description of mechanism. As for the CCMs, I don't think there has been a discussion, but we can collectively, again, I'm not speaking now on behalf of the board, but we need to think collectively on how to improve the situation. Again, in terms of how the Global Fund will look like in the next period, in GC8 cycle and further on. Thanks.
Thank you, Manoj and Vitali, for this discussion. Hi, Moon. Sorry, we cannot take more questions for now, as we also need to finish by time. So thank you so much for all the participants to raise your questions, as well as being with us during this whole discussion. I'll give the floor back to Jennifer. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you. Great, thank you so much, Shimi. And I know Moon's question, and I recognize that there will be a number of questions pertaining to GC7 and GCA. As noted in the start of the webinar, we will have another webinar tomorrow, specifically about the prioritization and also for further discussions, if time allowed, to talk about GCA and replenishment if possible. So